Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Dublin Tech Talks. We put out through the meetup groups and LinkedIn pages just to get your input and ideas on what type of topics you'd like to cover, and the replies concerning information security and privacy were really common. So we've put together a panel today of three experts in the industry: Keary, CEO and founder of EdgeScan; Jon Gleich, who's VP of Services for Protegrity; and Tom Keating, who's VP of Engineering in Proofpoint. And they're all going to give us their thoughts and hopefully get some learning going today on this subject. Just to call out that Dublin Tech Talks is proudly sponsored by Icon Accounting, and that's Ireland's leading supplier of services for professional technology contractors, and we really appreciate their support. So thanks for joining us this morning, guys. Just going to cover off a couple of the most common questions that we've gotten, and really appreciate your input. So just jump straight into it, I guess. With everything that's happening in terms of the changes in how people are working and how they're staying connected to the company ecosystems, vulnerability management has really come to the fore and is a pressing concern for all enterprises. So just generally, what has changed over the last few months, and why is it really important now that companies pay particular attention to this area? Maybe Owen, if you want to jump in and start us off.
Yeah, sure, Dave. I suppose it's a bit of a change from a vulnerability management perspective. The model in terms of securing your business has changed, because now you have people, everybody's remote, so therefore you don't have the magic wand where everybody's connected to a network and you can monitor and sort of make sure people are patched up and stuff like that. So there's a couple of challenges. One of them is we're seeing in EdgeScan, we're seeing an uptick in sort of insecure remote desktop features being deployed. So a lot of organizations, a lot of clients, that we have are, overnight that they may have had to deploy remote desktop functionality for their staff, and you're talking about maybe hundreds or even thousands of staff. So in some cases it's been done correctly, but in other cases, you have some might be smaller to medium-sized organizations that are deploying insecure ways of connecting into the network in order for people to do their work, which is then increasing the sort of what we call, a fancy word would be, it increases the attack surface of an organization, because there's more sort of holes in the network for people to connect into, and some of those ways of connecting are more insecure. So that's one thing. I suppose the other thing is it's just to making sure that if you have staff remote working, they have laptops, making sure that the laptops are being patched and virus definitions are being updated, and people are not like maybe sharing a corporate laptop at home, which is not it's probably very common in this day and age. But the idea of sort of maintaining data hygiene is different.
Yeah.
Data hygiene being, not leaving things lying around, in the home office or whatever it may be. It also means things like, as I said, making sure your systems are patched, making sure that, making sure that you do the appropriate updates and stuff like that, which is a challenge as well for, if you have 2,000 remote workers all of a sudden overnight, how do you keep track of that? How do you keep pace with that? And what you do see with the COVID stuff is an uptick in phishing and malware relating to COVID, which the threat actors, the hackers in effect, are leveraging this and trying to attack remote workers. So we see a change in sort of the landscape as a result of this, which is it's challenging to some degree, but it's not unsurmountable. It's sort of it's just different. It's different, and it's taking organizations a little bit of time to keep up with this new world. I think that's sort of where we are.
So I guess it's the consequence, right, of different organizations being at different levels of maturity. So some are very well equipped and already in the cloud, so everyone is working through a VPN, and then for others it was kind of a mad dash to get some kind of a solution in place that would allow people, literally just to connect to each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Owen is there resonates very, very relevant. I think there is the two parts, just as Owen was saying. I think the biggest thing is companies, they've moved from just a working from home, which was a temporary thing, which you took a day off or 2 days off. Now you're working at home. And I use that term myself purely on the basis, just like when I was explaining to you earlier, like you have kids at home, you have family life at home. And that's a new thing for people. Some people, their work environment was important to them because they were dealing with people on a day-to-day. Now they're suddenly in this isolated environment, never mind anything else, and trying to operate in that with the distractions at home. But I do think the challenge, and I saw this actually when we're starting to close down, let's say, electronic companies were actually not having any laptops anymore. They were all being sold out. So you could see companies were making this rush to get gear. They weren't prepared. Some businesses now, I'm fortunate in the business I'm in, our company were well able to transition on that, and that's fine. But I think in the main, most people, it's a new challenge, first of all, to get their IT system set up. And I think that's where the biggest risk is because people are not used to it. The threat actors, just as Owen was saying now, are actually getting very smart. They're looking at what the latest news are. They're trying to get focused on figuring out what is the way to, let's say, fool these people who are at home. And, I've seen several of this even where several banking messaging systems, which are perfectly legitimate, and there's a lot of man in the middle where they're intercepting and they're trying to fool people. And what's happening is because it's all relevant, people just don't know. So they're seeing a lot of email traffic, and there's a lot of challenges around that. And that's why they're getting smarter. And our advice to people has been one of, you do want to, make sure that people have their computer set up, they have all the patching done on it, they are using VPN, making sure their passwords are strong. And one thing we've tried to also do and try to encourage people is think about making more people-centric the approach here, because sometimes we get very caught up on just, well, you're up and running now, you're grand.
Yeah.
It isn't. You have to actually get people, there is a bit of security awareness training. People need to get used to this lifelong, because they can't go down to the IT chap or go down to the security person and say, I've seen this. They're now by themselves. And, it doesn't matter. It's the human instinct to the side. So yeah, there is those two parts of it, where getting used to being at home, which is a different world, and making sure your systems work, because most people at home, a lot of people would have had broadband that wouldn't have been the fastest. So now they're getting a lot more traffic. Even like this Zoom conference and stuff takes up an awful lot of data. All those challenges, things that we take for granted, that suddenly now come to the fore. And then understanding the dangers of being at home, and these threat actors are out there actually making sense. I think that's the biggest thing out of this, and that's where just as Owen was rightly saying, like even simple things of data hygiene and stuff like that, things, again, I think the way I would say it to people is, you're not in the office now, you're at home. It is a different reality, and you have to adjust accordingly. If you don't, the problem is those rules don't apply. So, so that's really right.
I think we'll kind of touch again on kind of the pitfalls of having such large numbers working. I think it's quite interesting, as you've said there, the threat actors. I mean, the whole premise, or one of the kind of mechanisms they have are around fear, right, and manipulating fear. And when everyone is in such a heightened state, anything that's looks like it's an official request for X, Y, Z. But we'll touch on that.
Well, just one thing, just on that, the threat actors are looking even at the latest news, and they're fabricating their attacks to make it look like the very latest thing, which actually fools people because it's in their heads. And that's the huge challenge inside them.
Okay, good. John, anything to add?
I think the guys covered it really well. I guess I will say that, it's true. I mean, the remote tool usage between, February and April was up 133% or something crazy. I mean, you've got all these new people, all these people that are working for companies and that are using these new tools. So for companies such as the ones the guys represent that are, this is a lot of newness. I think that we have to, there's a lot of security concerns there. For us though, for Protegrity, my company, we're always it's the same as it's always been. It's protecting the data, that the personal identifiable data at rest or wherever it lives. So it's kind of like more of the same kind of for us. And it just kind of one of those things where everyone, there's just more people and more people at risk and more records at risk. And it's just one of those things that we're just seeing more companies actually coming to us to say, our budgets are cut for analytics, our budgets are cut for other types of projects, but security and cyber, no, we need you more than ever. So it's really interesting to see what's happening in the industry.
Cool. Well, I'm going to come back to you on the whole area of privacy, because that's, in itself, I think is something that people are really interested in. I'm going to put you on the spot. I think you mentioned you maybe had some stats in terms of what the most common vulnerabilities are that you guys are seeing.
Yeah, so we have a report comes out every year called the EdgeCon Vulnerability Stats Report. And it feeds into the Verizon DBIR as well, which is sort of the largest probably statistical model annually, which is delivered by Verizon. Well, what we're still seeing is things like the majority of vulnerabilities we're finding are between 3 and 2 and 5 years old. That the majority of breaches are a result of hackers exploiting older vulnerabilities. So it's not 0 days. It's not it's people that have unpatched systems. And again, going back to this remote model we have, if you're not patching your system, you get a piece of malware due to the fact that you've an open vulnerability and your laptop hasn't been patched. But in terms of general internet security, we're seeing that the most risk, the highest risk density, which is where all the critical and high risk issues are, it's still in the web application layer. And you have a lot of businesses now moving towards, and we're seeing a large uptick in terms of businesses going web enabled, sort of putting more effort into online sales, because their bricks and mortar shops and stuff are closed, and we're it's still, so there's a bit of a rush there, because obviously people need new revenue streams, and we do find lots of interesting things there. People are rushing, they're getting systems built, online shops built quickly, they're misconfigured, they have coding errors, they haven't gone through the process maybe as rigorously as they had before because of this rush to market. And it is still something that I don't think is going to change anytime soon. So it's primarily it's poor patching and all, is one part of it, and the other part of it is web application security, APIs, etc. Is where we find the majority of critical and high risks as of January 2020. Yeah. And
so do you think that's a result of, is it more a case of, with the extra kind of focus and push in that area, that the underlying coding security just wasn't there in the first place, or that people are making the decision to fast track stuff through and perhaps
it's a bit of both? Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think we've always had a problem with application security and software security. Everything is software, let's be honest about it. But in terms of web applications, the risks for the last, so the report is in its 5th year, and sort of a constant theme across the last 5 years is the web application layer is the weak spot. And why is that though? Because every application is unique, every coder is unique, and every coder writes code in their own way, and bugs can occur. And bugs can manifest themselves into security vulnerabilities in some cases. So it's very much like that. But I think the rush now to build out the online presence and the rush to sort of, again, as it says, maybe expand or enable new revenue streams via online has increased. I'd say looking at the vulnerability stats for this year, at the end of this year, for 2020, when we do it later on this year, I'd say you will probably see a significant uptick in sort of critical and high risk issues in the web layer, particularly from say March to June and so on, until things settle. Because people, I think we're all comfortable working at home now. Most of us are that have been doing it for the last 3 months, but I think businesses are a little bit slower to adjust from a technical point of view, and I think that's a big challenge, you know.
Yeah. Okay, Tom. Clearly, that's not the case in your engineering department. But is there anything you want to add to that in terms of?
Yeah, I suppose the two things I'll add a bit. I took some notes in advance of this, of some stats from our perspective. But just what I was saying there, I think the other thing is that cloud access security broker technology, people are going to have to start looking, if they haven't already, or CASB is the term for it. That's the thing that's going to have to help people to protect themselves. And on is correct. People have made the leap. Some have made the transition carefully, and they'll be fine. Others have just made the leap in.
Yeah.
And actually, this sort of setup has suddenly exposed the weaknesses there that they haven't been thinking about this. So I think there's huge challenges there for organizations around this from the security end. But just ourselves, like from our perspective, the vulnerability stats, and I took a few notes here, is like even as way back as starting in January when the whole virus was kicking off, we saw like the Imotech coronavirus themed attacks on health guidance. All those things about, hey, do you know your symptoms, and all this kind of stuff, getting people lured into that. And then as things moved on, and we have here in February, and this is coming from our threat team, research team who've been looking at this all the time. Then they focused on targeting global shipping concerns. So this is more things. So this is very themed to what I was saying earlier, where they've got very smart. And other ones, like attackers expand the Corona's theme based on conspiracy theories.
All right.
And scripting, you might be thinking, but that's an interesting angle in itself.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of that. Then in March, then it moved into, because everyone then in March transitioned to being at home, then they looked at the whole area of streaming accounts. So our very familiar ones, like I just have them here, like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Spotify, Apple Music. And I know myself, I get these emails that you have to do a double take, and you go, they're so well scripted.
Yeah.
Because it's very relevant, it's in your head. You're thinking, oh, did I do something with Netflix? Oh, I better click and log into my thing. And that's another one. And then as we got into April, which is a nice progression, this very technology and other technologies, Zoom, WebEx, phishing lures, getting people into that, which gets them more access to getting into, let's say, the social engineering aspects. And then, of course, last but not least, the old classic COVID-19 payment lures. Now that people are in there, they're trying to buy things. So, the threat actors, this is all very smart and very intelligent ways of fooling people. And, that's really where it has gone on, and it's relentless. This is the thing, relentless inside there. So I think one of the things we're trying to help from our perspective, and it's the same with Owen and John here, is you're trying to make sure people have the technologies, they have the tools, they have the services, they have the data, and then it is back to security awareness training. You've got to, and that helps, because all this thing is happening. And I know myself, I've been in this business long enough. You still get that email that you look at and go, oh yeah, and only actually you're trained to go, hang on a minute. But that's okay for me because I'm in the industry. So one of the things you have to try to do is help people with that. And that's not something you can do overnight. It is something you have to consciously, and that's why we've adopted the thing with our customers, and anyone else will with, is a people-centric approach focused on your individuals, because all of us as individuals, we are actually the weakest link. Some great technologies in our perimeters, some super gear that our IT groups have all put in there, but the human being, us, we're the punter who clicks that link, the SMS message, the text message, and then everything like that. So that's really where it is at the moment, where the landscape has progressed, and you can see the progression there.
Yeah, it's interesting when you lay it out like that. I mean, just in terms of the threat actors and the strategy, I mean, it doesn't matter how ridiculous the concept is, but there's a catchment group in that. Like, so, not everyone buys into the conspiracy theory thing, but there's a large enough body of people in there that's definitely an avenue that they want to take. So,
well, that's it. If you send out 1 million emails and get a 1% hit rate, you're doing well.
Bang on, exactly. They only have to hit it in once.
Okay. So look, I don't want to kind of labor the remote working thing, because I do want to talk on a little bit about the data privacy bit. But in terms of, you know, with such large numbers of people now working remotely, what pitfalls should companies be aware of? John, have you seen anything with your customer base? Sorry, John, we just lost your sound there.
Pitfalls
Yeah.
about, it's interesting. I mean, I think that everybody's been trying to feel their way. I think that for my customers, are usually the big banks and the telcos. They're all very well set up, and it's actually been quite smooth. You know, the way that we're working together. People, again, you know, we're consultants. We like to be with our customers, but everybody is very well set up to be remote with the big enterprises. And I've actually been very impressed with the way that our customers have responded and the way that we've been able to respond, you know, in that way. So I'd say that just from a remote working perspective at the enterprise level, I think it's actually been quite smooth. I don't know about the other guys.
Mm. Owen, have you anything in perhaps outside the enterprise space that you've become aware of?
Well, you know what, you know, something that Tom mentioned is the rush to get laptops. And, you know, we were lucky, as I said before the call, we had to transfer our development team to remote, and they actually had desktops, and we had to buy them all laptops to do that. But you know, so we had a bit of time. We were lucky enough, and we had it planned anyway. But in the rush to get laptops, you might be in the position where people have sensitive data on their laptops at home, and in fact the laptop is a mobile device, and the hard drive may not be encrypted, right? It's because they haven't had time. An organization may have not have time to set up configure the laptops to be, you know, robust and secure and suitable for remote working. That's one thing. And as I said before, you know, pitfalls. If you're going to rush head first into expanding your online stuff, take a little bit of time to look at the security aspects. I know it can be difficult, but even looking at the basics, because to be honest, some of the stuff we're finding is horrific in terms of the vulnerabilities we're finding, and it's not a good place to be if you're struggling as it is as an organization because of the world we live in now, and then all of a sudden you get your business gets hacked on top of that. Because you know, I don't think GDPR cares, or, you know, the sort of the compliance and the governance, you know, the fines you can get from the EU for data disclosure. I don't think that they will take into account that you had to change your business overnight. Bottom line is, if you do get hacked, and if EU citizen data is leaked, you know, you will get hit. So don't rush. Take your time and get it done properly. You know.
That's a really, really good point. Tom, any final comments on this before we jump over?
Just as Owen saying there, I think the big challenge was the rush out to get set up at home for companies that were not ready. And I was right. I think the advice is take your time to make sure you've got all your images right, setting people up, knowing how to use the security technology, how to log into your VPN that you might have, or setting it up, and take that time. And if you haven't, focus, like, people are the most important part here, so don't put them under that pressure, because it doesn't matter, they will make mistakes under the pressure of trying to operate, and they'll do things casually without even thinking. So I agree. I think we have enough challenges, and I think companies have enough challenges within this whole environment without adding to it, so like having a data breach, and worse still if it was customer data, the reputation on top of that. So I do think, take time, get it set up, do your verification, make sure you have the latest patching, all this kind of stuff of software, and go back to basics. And if that slows things down for a little bit, that's okay. Take that time out, because that will save you an awful lot of potential heartache later on. And then if you can, to help educate your folks who are not used to doing this, and take your time on that stuff. So
good. Okay, thanks for that. So finally, just the whole area of data privacy, I think with the kind of heralding of perhaps, and we've seen them rolled out already, some of the COVID apps at a national level, or wider geographical level. So there seems to be a move in that, as well as just, I guess, being asked to sign up for this platform or that platform, or, we're getting multiple requests, whether it's socially for stuff with friends, business communications like Zoom and WebEx, and then all of the kind of the security concerns that have been raised around them. I guess there's just an explosion of invites and processes now, and at the center of all of that is a concern of about our privacy and where our data sits and what we're giving away. So a really broad question, I guess, but maybe Jon, do you want to start? Like, should we be concerned with centralized data, at a national or European level, stuff like the COVID apps, and what should people be mindful of with all of these, sign up requests from a privacy and data perspective?
I mean, I think in general, and it's always been the way, I mean, that people need to be concerned about it, and very concerned, and increasingly more and more concerned about where their data is and who has their data and who has access to them. I mean, if you look at, again, this isn't necessarily about the COVID, but, what was it, EasyJet just the other day with a huge data breach, 9 million records hacked, stolen credit card data, the CVV numbers as well. Marriott, everybody uses Marriott, what is it, 500 million people were affected who had made reservations at Starwood Suites. I mean, that's 500 million, I'm not sure if those are unique people, but, and then they were hacked again for a second time. They did a little better this time with 5.2 million people, but this is all within 16 months. So the thing is, from my perspective, and I can't speak for anybody else, but why, what I'm looking for now is I want to do business. I want to give my data to customers or to companies that are going to look after it, right? And I think more now than ever, it's important for us to understand where our data is and how it's being protected. And I think that's I think that's why we're all in business, is to make the online world a safer place. I know that's a passion for me. I don't know. What about you?
So Owen, I guess that, when we get these requests to sign up, I mean, does anyone actually read these, privacy statements and terms and conditions? Everyone just seems to automatically click. Should we be paying attention to the fine print now more than ever?
We should, but we don't, so we never will. That's the truth. If you look at a lot of even software aimed at teenagers and youths, some of the verbiage and wording and the terms and conditions that young people would have to sign up to, or older people, they're not too familiar with the terms. They're expected to click OK to these EULAs, and they don't even know what they're clicking OK to. But we're all guilty of that. I think the concern for me is the central, like say with the COVID tracking apps, right? Or I don't think people's privacy will be preserved 100% using those types of apps, but it's a lesser evil than a spike or things getting worse through the pandemic. That's my personal view. But in saying that, there's different models. Like the app that suggested, that's being worked on for Ireland is the data stored in the phone, and if you do get sick, you upload your data. And then that data has a record of other people you've been in close contact with via the Bluetooth ping. If somebody was near you, and other people with the app. But the MEPs in April had concerns over centralized data. So the idea of storing data for EU citizens, in effect, or Irish people in this case, in a centralized place. And it's not always, I think Jon's spot on around data security and the protections of some of the horror stories he mentioned. But the idea is that, if that data can be linked to an individual, I think that the model is they're trying not to be able to link it to a person, but they can. They're the government. They will be able to do that if they need to. But the thing is that who's storing that data? And after this thing is fixed and we have a vaccine, and is that data going to be purged? Is it going to be kept or used for different purposes, right? Because we're talking about, in some cases, nation states abusing the data they have. And we had a similar thing with the public services card, and there's a spat now between the government and the DPC around the usage of that data. So the concern, the technology is one piece, in terms of how is this data being sort of accumulated, but then how is it being used is another concern. And if it is stored in a centralized place, you know, who has access, who's the key, who is the keys to the kingdom, and can we as citizens be guaranteed that that data is only used for its purposes it's meant for, and also it's purged when it's not being used anymore. And I'm not saying that any of those things will happen, but I think that there's certainly questions we should be asking.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So Tom, we might be getting back into the realm of the small conspiracy theory percentage here, but should we be concerned about this stuff, or you know what's your view on? I mean, what Owen said and John, it makes perfect sense. Anything to add?
Yeah, the thing I would add in is, like, if governments are going to do this, which they are going down this path, and we understand why, and everyone understands the rationale behind it, I think if they start to use what the Google and Apple standards they have, which they're actually putting into their devices, mobile devices at the moment, the good thing about those contact tracing APIs, and I know Apple themselves, I think it came out in the latest update of the iOS recently, they actually have less privacy risks. There are simple reasons that they will anonymize your data. They're not worrying about the location side of it. And I even saw a report there where in Germany they were even making available the source code from a transparency point of view for people, so they can see the app and stuff. So I think what I was also saying there is, as long as people understand what the data is there for, what has been used for, and I do believe if you stick to that, the Google Apple frameworks, that is, we have the best chance of privacy on your device. Yeah. Now, that in itself is wonderful, but therein lies the old classic, the hacker with it, and the threat actor will go, interesting, I will try to fake ways, again, sending SMSs man in the middle onto people's phone. Hey, this is the official thing, because I know, and I have a note here, like there's in Mexico, I think there was some fake app pretending to be from the Mexican government, getting people to put it down, and of course then they're getting access to information. So I think the key thing is you're going to go up onto those app stores, you go directly to them, you don't go through links, you make sure you see them there, they're as they are. And as long as governments are doing that, now I think on top of that, then obviously they have to be a bit more transparent on, this is the data, this is where we're going to store it, and then when it's all finished, this is the way we're going to destroy it, which again, it should be in line with the GDPR protocol. Regardless of this, even if you do everything by the numbers, people are still going to get paranoid. There's still going to be conspiracy theories, but to be brutally honest, this is, dare I say, a necessary evil to a point where I know people will claim, my God, this is intrusion on my freedom and that. You know, to a degree, if you were to bring it in a pure sense, yes, but we're knowingly and doing it voluntarily, just like we did when we went into isolation voluntarily. We knew it was an affront for us to be at home and not doing it, but once we know it's done right and we trust the government and they've been transparent and they're using the right technologies and they're not going off doing it themselves and stuff, then I think it's okay. I think it's fine to do it. Just have to watch out for those threat actors trying their tricks, though. That's the only thing.
So as long as they're following the advice you've given today, do it properly, take your time, don't rush this. This is certainly not something you want to rush to market. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I mean, that's it really for today. Really appreciate your time, Tom, John, and Owen. Thanks for sharing your thoughts, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, guys.
And thanks everyone for watching today. If you want to get notifications about our upcoming interviews, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, or you can simply join our meetup page, Dublin Tech Talks, or follow the Dublin Tech Talks page on LinkedIn. So we'll see you again next time. Thanks.